Yeah.
So hopefully that will help.
This is our third Our Revolutionary meeting. Again, this is a continuation of Bernie Sanders' political movement. All right, so our next up is we have Andrew going to introduce our next guest.
So I think in the Democratic and Republican primaries, people learned a lot that it's not so important what the party does or who the party elects, but it's more about the people who are actually going to be on the ballot. So the Democrats elected someone who's not qualified for office, the Republicans likewise. So after that happened, I reached out to Pepper Snyder because I knew that her values and her positions on policy aligned a lot more with the Bernie Sanders campaign, or just, you know, transparent, accountable, progressive values in many instances, I would say. More so than any other candidate out there, especially for the 3rd District for U.S. Representative. So thought she should come here and talk to the Bernie people because, or the Our Revolution group, because it's the best group of people that I've met organizing around some of the problems that we're having in politics. So I'll let Pepper talk about.
Yay, Pepper.
Well, I can't promise you're going to love me. I am a libertarian. I do want to thank the other libertarians here for behaving themselves. I know it's probably a little difficult. I can tell you that running against Jim Banks, you're going to find some differences, probably most likely in religious liberties, in the sense that I don't want government to be your church. I don't want to be your pastor. I'm opposed to government telling people who they can and can't marry. I don't think you may not agree with me on economics, mostly, but I will tell you that I'm opposed to corporate welfare, and I'll do everything in my power to end that as your congresswoman. I believe, in regards to welfare in general, I would not touch welfare, period, until we go after corporate welfare, because I think it's ridiculous to ask, you know, the more poverty-stricken people to go without while we're handing out millions and millions and millions upon millions to people who do not need it. As for other economic issues, I am a capitalist. You're probably not going to like me in that area, but one of the things I want to do as a congresswoman, I know someone asked on Facebook to ask me this, so I'll go ahead and answer that. One of the things that I will do as a congresswoman that I want to focus on is criminal justice reform and decriminalizing marijuana. I want to get rid of laws that don't have victims. We've got some of the issues with Black Lives Matter right now, and I think that it's important to listen to that, because I think that we have a system now where people are regulated, nickel and dime. I mean, we had the report out of Ferguson where they talked about people were being fined for their hedges being too tall in front of their own windows on their own property. And so what they do is they go in and they ticket these people, and they ticket them, and they don't have money to pay these fines. And so they end up in jail. And you see that a lot. We have laws now that we have put our police in a position of bringing in revenue. And in order to do that, they're going to go after the poor people. That's who they're going to go after. Poor minorities, people that they think that the majority will not care about. And I think that that's a problem with criminal justice reform. I would like to get in there and end some of those laws that find people into the poorhouse, into jail, over and over and over again, taking children away from their parents, taking fathers away from their children, putting them in prison. We've got a Republican Party that likes to cry out for family values while they're locking up mom or dad because they had an ounce too much of pot. And how do we reconcile that with family values when we've got kids growing up without parents for ridiculous things like that? I would mostly like to take some questions for you, answer any kind of questions you have that may make you more comfortable voting for a libertarian than Jim Banks.
So I have a question based, like, I understand, like, libertarian views on marijuana are very relaxed. They, you know, they want legalization and things like that. But would there be ever a time where you would implement that to kind of reduce the opioid addiction that we have here in the States?
As for legalizing heroin, is that what you're asking?
Well, like how, I guess legalizing marijuana in an effort to combat the opioid addiction in Indiana. Like
Absolutely.
using methods of that.
Well, I think that heroin used to be legal. It used to be prescribed to people. You could go into shops, women could go into shops and get it in their tea. There was not an addiction problem when that happened, when that law was in place, or where it was legal for you to do that. The problem came when government stepped in and made all these laws to go after minorities and cultures that were more likely to use certain kinds of drugs. And that is when everything went crazy. And I think that with the opiates that you mentioned, my brother is an opiate addict. He came back from Afghanistan and Iraq, and he was addicted to what they were giving him to help him cope with his PTSD. When the government issued new rules for them to stop doing that, they cut them all off. And so they went to street drugs. He's now serving time in prison in Illinois because of his addiction. Those laws hurt my brother. They put him on this path to begin with. They shoved that crap at him nonstop, and then they cut him off. And so he lost his wife, he lost his kids. Our relationship isn't the greatest because of things that happened with our family, with him going through that and us trying to help him with no help. I personally have experience with this. I've seen what happens. I know these laws are doing nothing but pushing people into corners. And now he's got his 2 kids that are growing up without him in their life. And it's something that is personal to me.
I have two questions. One, what are your feelings on campaign finance reform? And the second, I know Gary Johnson believes that education should just be, education's too much. So I'd love to hear your views on campaign finance reform, number 1, and then on education.
Okay. I want to get money out of politics, period. That's one of my main goals, is to get money out of politics. Education. I'm probably more in line with Gary Johnson on education. I think that what you will see about Gary Johnson is he's not campaigning to change things. He's more of a, trying to think of how to describe, somebody described it personally. We have destination libertarians and we have directional libertarians. Gary Johnson's more of a directional libertarian. He wants to put people on a path to show them how libertarianism can work. And I think that with education, his main goal is to get the federal government out of education. And that's something that I strongly support, is getting the federal government out of education. I want Indiana to have control over its own schools. And if that means getting rid of the Federal Department of Education, that's what I would support. And you may not agree with me on that, and I understand that.
Yes, she said that she wants to get money out of politics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else?
As far as the economy is concerned and the low wage jobs that we have in Indiana, people that are unemployed and a lot of disabled people that are college educated and not employed, do you have any plans to help with that?
My goal for helping people in most need is to cut back on those, to go after those instances where it's easy to fraud the system. And working in benefit recovery, I think I have a strong background and some ideas on how to do that.
What are your feelings on healthcare? Not just specifically Obamacare, because I know everybody goes up, but just, Bernie's for giving everyone healthcare, making it, a right for every person. How do you feel?
may not like me on this. I'm opposed to Obamacare. Here's why. I'm not opposed to people having health care. I believe health care is a right. I think that the problem with rights that we have now is that we now confuse rights with things that government is supposed to give us. One example that I can use that might resonate with some people in the Bernie camp. I have a Second Amendment right to a gun. If I'm poor, does this mean government should provide me a gun? No. And I'm opposed to that. I don't think we should force people to purchase health care. And I think that that's where my problem lies with Obamacare, is that there is that mandate that says you have to do this.
So what would your proposal be for, like, healthcare?
Get
If not
rid-
Obamacare?
Getting rid of that mandate. I have no problem with providing health care to people who are in need. I do fraud. In order to help people the most, we have to go after the fraud cases.
But I guess, like, I have insurance. I'm 25. I am drowning in medical debt. Like, drowning, because it's ridiculous. They make you pay your premiums, and then you have a ridiculous deductible, and then if you're not healthy in a year, it starts all over again, and you just end up in this, I have chronic illness. I will never not be in this cycle. I can't afford, I have a $4,000 deductible. It goes up to $5,000 next year. So, like, I guess I technically can provide health care for myself, but it's not helping me. I mean, I guess I don't owe $100,000, I only owe $5,000, but to me that's the same. I'm still sitting with debt, just accumulating and accumulating. So I guess that's more of what I'm asking, like, because Bernie obviously wanted to provide health care to everyone. And if you don't have, I get not liking Obamacare, like forcing people to buy health care, but how are you going to make it so that these healthcare companies can't say they're providing health care for you, but you're still drowning in debt even when you're paying all this money for your insurance?
Well, I think that you need to offer so that you can buy it across state lines. I also think that we need to end the mandate for, government got involved in the healthcare industry a long time ago and required that companies purchase health insurance. That caused premiums to go up. That caused the price of healthcare to skyrocket. And now we've got deductibles, everything like that. Ours went up, going up again. And after the involvement of a government again. I think that me as a libertarian, you may not agree with this, and this may be a problem that you have. My goal as a libertarian, I believe, is to get government as far out of it as possible, and I believe that that will help those prices go down.
So you think corporations are just going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to lower my prices?
When government stops supporting corporations, yes.
That's interesting.
So to follow up on that, you would be against universal health care?
Yes.
Okay.
I have another question. It's about taxes. Like, I don't know much about the libertarian belief in taxes. I've heard some things that I don't understand.
We don't like taxes.
Yes.
I'm opposed to the income tax. Obviously, we have an income tax. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. I would do everything in my power to cut taxes, especially for anyone on those lower brackets. When Mitt Romney made the big stink about the 47% don't pay taxes, my problem was, okay, why can't we get the other 47% to not pay taxes too? I support a flat tax. I support, that's the only kind of tax I'm going to support. Tax the goods that people are using. Everyone will be paying those taxes, yes. If you look at Gary Johnson's plan, he has a plan where he does support a flat tax that exempts that bottom, I think it's 50,000 or less, that don't pay taxes, and they'll get like a reimbursement. And that's where I'm coming with taxes. My goal as a libertarian is to get rid of the income tax altogether. I don't think we need it. I think that it's doing nothing. I mean, we say we're going to tax the rich. They're not the ones being taxed. It's just coming back on us every single time.
So I guess if you took out that income, how are you going to, and you say you want to put in a flat tax, but what if you don't get those all at the same time? How are you going to pay for the stuff that the income tax is
Well, it's
now?
interesting because colleges and wars and militaries and schools were all paid for before the income tax even existed. And we tax goods. That's how we pay for them, tariffs, things like that. That's how we pay for these things. We had roads before the income tax. We had colleges before the income tax. We fought and won 8 wars before the income tax. I'm not concerned that the money won't be there. Grant, you just said that, what if you can't get the flat tax and get rid of the income tax? I would not do that. There has to be something at that point.
I guess, and then to follow up on it a little bit more, if I see your analogy to that, like when we didn't have the taxes before and we were paying for these roads and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But back then we didn't have the size of infrastructure that we have now.
We
So
didn't have as many people as we do now, too.
and that would also describe it. But like for our wars and things like that, I think our wars would probably cost even more than they did back then. So how would I guess I don't understand how that comparison could be made when the inflation has gone up past that.
The inflation has gone up mostly because of the way our system is set up now. We are printing money, we're printing money. That's causing the inflation to go up. When you stop printing money, you audit the Federal Reserve, you calm things down a little bit. And that's what libertarian is. We want to not just address taxes of the rich. We want to kind of break up that whole system behind that's supporting the whole thing. And I think that you mentioned wars. Wars shouldn't be the way they are now. And I think that we don't fight wars anymore for our own defense.
Oh, of course.
We're going to support drug lords in wherever they are. Afghanistan. They have a opium crop that we are helping protect right now. And it's making its way back to America and into the hands of soldiers. I think that libertarianism would not just tackle one issue. We go after the whole program, wars being one of them. We should not be fighting all these wars. It should not cost as much as it's costing for wars because we don't need to fight for our own self-defense right now. There's nothing directly threatening us right now.
We kind of just briefly touched on an issue that I see as a main core problem in a lot of our issues, which is the size of our population. How do you feel about things like women's reproductive rights, access to birth control, access to sex education? What's the libertarian view on all of that kind of thing?
I think birth control should be sold over the counter. I'm Catholic. My husband and I have 7 children. Excuse me. I have not given birth to 7 children, but my husband had custody of his 3 daughters from his first marriage, and we had 4 together. I personally did not support birth control. I did have to have it to the litigation after some issues with my last pregnancy. And one thing, I would support birth control over the counter. I would like to see that. Reproductive rights, I assume you're talking about abortion?
Yeah.
Okay. The abortion issue, I am pro-life. However, I do not believe that it is productive to continuously ask Congress to write laws after laws after laws that are just going to get overturned. It's a Supreme Court issue. There's nothing that I can do as a congresswoman for abortion, for both pro-choicers and pro-lifers, other than increase funding for it, for anything abortion related, or cut off funding for anything abortion related. I can also promise you that even though I would not ever vote for funding of abortion, I also would not vote for funding of pro-life things. I'm libertarian. We don't like to fund things. I'm not going to vote for it. I believe that my role as a pro-life Catholic is to work in my community to offer assistance to women who need help, who are seeking help, who otherwise would not get an abortion if they had some help. My goal as a pro-life Catholic is not to go out and attack women and to call them murderers and to try to make things more difficult for them, because I honestly believe that government could outlaw abortion tomorrow and it's not going to stop it. Abortion is something that you either believe that there's a baby there or you don't. No law is going to change that view. And so I think that you have abortion decreasing now, and I think that getting government involved in that would probably stop that decrease and possibly cause it to increase. I think that you see it with the drug war. We didn't have an addiction problem until government got involved. Now we finally have an abortion problem. That's decreasing. Women are less likely to get abortions now than they were 10 years ago. I think a lot of that has to do with maybe the 4D ultrasound. Maybe women are seeing that more often and deciding maybe they're not going to take that chance. I believe that going after women, putting them in jail is going to have an adverse effect that I would like to happen. If someone wants to stop abortion, they should offer assistance to a woman who needs help. And if she doesn't want that help, you can't force her. Women were getting abortion long before government gave them permission to get abortions.
Is it safe to say then also that the libertarian view would be against, like, say, offering sex education in schools?
I have no problems with schools offering whatever education they feel like they need to in their own local communities. I send my kids to a Catholic school to get them the education that I choose to give them. I have no problems with public schools offering whatever they want. I believe that parents should have the opportunity to pull their kids out if they don't agree with that, or to exempt them from that. And some of you may disagree with that as well, but I think it ultimately lies with parents. And if you may say that parents may not teach that to their children, that's true, but they're the parent.
Okay. I just have to say that all the kids that I went to Catholic school with whose parents pulled them out of sex education
We
ended
do
up,
have sex education in the Catholic.
well, they ended up
schools.
pregnant. Because their parents pulled them out of sex ed because they were told not to use birth control, so.
We do have sex
Yeah.
education in Catholic schools, and it's probably a little bit more modern than it was a while ago, but probably not as modern as the public schools.
But I like your stance on birth control because in this day and age, there's really no reason for women to get pregnant with
Right.
all the birth control
If they don't
options
want
that
to,
are
right.
available to them. Yeah.
We have about one more time for one more question if David wants to have.
I just think it's crazy that our military is bigger than the next 26 countries behind us. Like 10 of them are our closest allies. If Congresswoman, what would you do towards the military budget?
I want to drastically cut the military budget, and I know Jim Banks would it's probably one of the things that we disagree with each other on the most is the military. We spent, I've read stories of anywhere from $10 million to $40 million on one gas station in Afghanistan.
Wow.
Why? Why are we spending that money on a gas station in Afghanistan? It would cost $500,000 to build that. And of course, the Pentagon lost all the records about where that money went and why it was magically just disappeared. I want to tackle things like that. I would probably cut military spending by 20%.